Back with you a little bit earlier than expected here on INC Live. Hello there everyone, my name is Karl Bainbridge and welcome to a PFL themed version of our preview show. I'm joined by the man on the right hand side of my screen. He is the Al Borland to my Tim the Toolman Taylor. He's my friend and yours, it's Joe Neal. Now Joe, I know you weren't too happy about some of those Limp Bizkit themed references. Is something home improvement themed a little bit better for you?
I don't think
you
so.
know me all too well.
But I actually really like that show, and because Tim Allen's son was actually Simba. There's actually an episode where at Halloween someone shows up as Buzz Lightyear and someone shows up as Simba, and he goes, "You're not getting candy. You definitely are." So I went with Lion King, and you're the Zazu to my Rafiki.
I'll take
to get
it.
Rowan Atkinson, because of nationality-wise. I mean, honestly. The side characters in Lion King.
And Rowan Atkinson, another great comedy legend over here. Black Eye there, Mr. Bean.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Bean is huge here. Like, he's just a legend. You know, Johnny English. I liked those movies a lot.
Lesser known
They're all
Rowan
really
Atkinson
fun.
one, which I would recommend for you as well. It only ran for 2 seasons. Thin Blue Line. Very underrated.
Check that out. I can
Basically,
add to the
think
list.
sort of like a 90s version of Dad's Army, but it's the police force.
Man.
We could very well be talking about sitcoms for the entire hour. Trust me, I have wanted to do that for several years. But we're actually here to talk about mixed martial arts on this mixed martial arts themed channel. But we're not going to be talking about the UFC. We will be turning our attention from the octagon to the smart cage, because the PFL on Saturday will be hosting its biggest ever event to date, the Battle of the Giants over in Saudi Arabia. And it marks the return of the baddest man on the planet, Francis Ngannou, finally returning to mixed martial arts. And we thought, this is a big event for the PFL. We always want to be quite supportive of any major promotion in the MMA landscape. And because as much as we do respect and appreciate the UFC, we also feel that the company are at their best when they have an active competitor. We saw that with Pride, we saw that with Strikeforce. So any attempt that we can to support the PFL or any other promotion outside the UFC, we feel we need to kind of do our bit.
Absolutely. Also, let's be honest. It's kind of fun to support support the PFL and kind of stick it to Dana. He's been talking mad crap on him lately, and I always like taking it out of him.
There has been a real sort of upping of words, I feel, between Dana White and Don Davis. I don't know if that's Dana being threatening, whether Don's trying to, sort of rattle the cage a little bit to try and get his name out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong on Don Davis' side with punching upwards. Like I know people criticize like AEW for doing that to WWE, but you kind of have to, in my opinion, when you're trying to, when you share the same market and you're trying to get a bigger piece of the market share, sometimes you have to be aggressive, I would imagine. I've never been in those shoes, but I would imagine that's probably the way to go. And for Dana, I mean, he just seems like he is a very fragile, egoed man. So I'm sure a little bit's like he's threatened and he's just not. I'm not putting up with this. I'm
Do
putting
you
it
think
down
maybe
now.
being
So
obviously Don's going on the offensive? That was something that Scott Corker never usually did. Do you think that was maybe one of his failings?
I think they worked together enough that he didn't want to. Like he probably thought Dana had like ammunition against him. Dana would have been like, I bought this other dork's company, I'll buy it again. Like
Scott always came across like one of the good eggs in the sport. Yeah.
He seems all right. He seems like a decent enough guy. Except for the fact that, wasn't it his idea to book Shamrock Hoist?
Yeah, that is something that we hold against him. I really want to cover Bellator 149 as a retro review. I really do.
We might have to call the audible.
Well, we still got a few months to decide, Joe, so that might be very much up to you. Before we actually talk about the PFL show itself, this is going to be a little bit of a different format for this one here, because normally we go through the entire main card, breaking down all the fights. We do acknowledge, though, that this is more of a niche product. There are going to be a lot of names that people might not know. So what we're going to be doing instead is going to be glossing over the majority of the card and putting more direct focus to the main and the core main. Before we do that, though, I just want to take this opportunity to talk about something which has kind of been on my mind. Now, I've had this feeling for a good few months now, but I think what happened in UFC 307 kind of emboldened it for me. There's always been this negative perception of grappling in mixed martial arts, even going back to the days of the Gracies. I know people like to sort of change the narrative about the Gracies, but for a good while, a lot of people didn't like that style. They wanted to see them lose. But I don't think I have ever seen grappling and wrestling as villainized as it's been over the past 12 months. And I think some of that might have been like the new generation of fans that we've got post-lockdown. Some of it may be the narratives that the UFC themselves are pushing. And I watched UFC 307, and I just kind of felt like that feeling towards grappling sort of reached a breaking point. We've talked about Pereira's matchmaking a lot. We won't beat around the bush. But along with that, you've got the false narratives about Ankalaev. You've got the crowd in Salt Lake who booed any kind of grappling exchange. You've got people like Guru and some of the libelous things he was saying about Mario Bautista in the way he fought against Jose Aldo. And he went off on a big time. He made like references to Diddy. Guru's a scumbag, but that's an argument for another time. I've never been a fan of the guy, to be honest.
Feels like it. He feels like it for sure.
And even away from 307, you have the way that Muhammad Makayev was treated. You have Merab, you have Bilal, who've both been vilified. You have the rumour that Karl Williams, in his last UFC fight, was told to strike with Deniz, and then got axed when he lost. Like, I understand that the UFC is an entertainment product. I understand it's a business. But at the end of the day, it's a sports promotion. And if a sportsman thinks the best way to get victory is to grapple, you can't hold that against him. If we sort of vilify wrestling in the way that we have been, and we sort of nullify its sort of effectiveness, we've got kickboxing.
Yeah. I am the biggest mark for Jose Aldo ever. And I tried everything I could to not make it seem like I was going to vilify Mario Bautista for fighting the fight the way he did. Because I even said it. Your best bet's probably Holly homing him in the preview show. George St. Pierre for a long time was who I considered, and a lot of people still do, and rightfully so. He's at minimum number 2 ever. If he's not 1, he's 2. That's my opinion on him. And he was super boring, and no one talks about it now. But for me, I tried to vilify the judging that took place in Utah last weekend, not the fighters, because it's not their fault that the opponent can't get off the cage. It's not their fault the opponent can't get up. It's not Merab's fault that the UFC avoided giving Sean O'Malley a wrestler forever. It's not Belal Muhammad's fault that Leon looked flat in their fight. Like, for all we know, Leon probably looked flat because he was afraid of the takedowns, which is part of Belal's game. Yeah. Like, that's a Belal point in his favor. You know what I mean? Like, that the fact that he made him flat-footed before they even stepped in. And I don't understand. For me, it's so weird to me because I feel like back when like Conor was like on top, or Dana would say he was on top. Habib kind of got thrown around the ring for a while, and because he's going to take you down, then beat you, but he's going to take you down first, and it would make Dana's head explode. It would it felt like, I'm gonna treat Habib like crap. Okay, and then Habib beats Conor. Now he's a superstar. He's a megastar, and now it's like, oh, grappling's awesome. Yeah, smash all you want, guys. Now that Habib's gone and Hamzat fights once every 5 years, it's fallen out of favor with him. He's so wishy-washy in that. Like, it's all about what makes him money. And that's frustrating from a fan point. And if you're a newer fan, Dana's opinion of things can easily sway you. you know, and so I mean, like, there's been like some legitimately boring champions we've had. Like, I don't think Bilal Muhammad's that fun to watch, but he's a legitimate champion. You want
Yes.
the best at the top, you know. No one in other sports, if we equate it to other sports, I'm sure you have stories of football and soccer for us. We have stories here about like the New England Patriots in American football, how they only threw the ball for 3 yards, 2 yards at a time, and it was like, oh my god, winning by inches, you're just bored to tears, you know. Or the San Antonio Spurs, who had a like really strict system where there's no showboating, there's no flashiness, they're just gonna get 2 points every time, and they're gonna play hard, controlling defense, like very stifling, like very George St. Pierre esque in basketball form, you know. And they had multiple dynasties from like 2000 to like 2014, multiple dynasties, and like it wasn't, you know, no one complained about it because you want the best to be the best, you know. And so it makes the downfall great, you know. um it's so weird and dumb to me. If like my two favorite fighters of all time are strikers primarily who can grapple, I still love me a good wrestler. If a good wrestler is like entertaining, then yeah, it's fantastic. Sure, if they're not,
Like,
hey,
I'm
whatever.
certainly not going to hold it against people for disliking grapplers. I'm honest in saying, like, I don't necessarily find wrestling or the Dagestani style all that effective. But it is part of the sport. It is an avenue to victory. And you got to kind of
Mm.
accept that.
It's yeah, like we were trashing on. I mean, I'm sure someone out there is like saying we're part of the problem because you know we make fun of you know, the Pajeda matchmaking, but then on the flip side we're making fun of Makayev and talking about taking naps during his fights, you know. But at the same time, like I don't want them vilified. You know, that's just us clowning around and joking. We don't want them actually vilified. We don't want that style vilified. It should be part of the game. That's why it was a big deal when Johnny Hendricks lost, but he made it a close fight against GSP. You know, and that's what made guys like Robbie Lawler so exciting. Like, well, hold on, he just beat Roy McDonald, who has a very similar style. Like, what if George can't take him down and he's got to fight with Robbie like that? Like, you know, and it creates excitement. Like I hate to kind of bring it to like professional wrestling, but I remember watching at this time. Remember how bad Jinder Mahal was, and the pop AJ got when AJ beat him, like for the belt. Like, you know, it was awesome. It was so good, and not everyone holds the belt forever, so it's not a big deal. Like, I remember, you know, what's it called, going, oh man, like GSP's gonna hold this belt forever, and like fast forward to now, and it's like we've had 5 champions
Wasn't
since
it
GSP.
Hendricks who beat John Fitch? And, like, that did wonders for him.
Yeah, one shot him. Yeah, basically walked in 7 seconds. Big left hand. Yeah, and just blew up from there. Because his next fight was Martin Kampman, and he did the same thing to him. There's just like, and then he had fought Carlos Condit in one of the craziest fights ever. And you know, like it's you shouldn't vilify it. It's one thing to like think of like, I think Bilal Muhammad's boring, and I'm not gonna take it out on him. You know, it's just a preference I have. You know, I'm glad he's the champion. I'm happy for him. Actively, congratulations, like legitimately. I thought his fight wasn't very good. I haven't had fun watching any of his fights, but hey, you know, like if him and Shavkat sounds great, because I know I'm a Shavkat fan and I want Shavkat to fight the best.
It is appropriate
What's
we
the
are
best?
talking about the sort of issues with grappling in regards to the UFC, because if we go to the PFL and you look at their finals, outside of the women's division, there's a chance that every champion in the PFL this year could either be Russian or from the Caucasus.
Yeah, What's it called? Last year, Ferreira was their
Yes, but
heavyweight
he's not in
champion,
the tournament this
but
year.
this year, no, they saved him for super fights
Yeah.
this year. And it's, like maybe Mukaya. Well, no,
He's gone
he
back
signed
to
with someone
Brave.
else, but people were speculating. Yeah, people were speculating that Mukaya was going to be 135 here. I don't think he's big enough.
So if you notice my link there to us talking about the PFL, it brings us onto the PFL. So we're going to be talking about the card in a lot more detail later on. But in general, where do you stand on the PFL in 2024? Because they just purchased Bellator, and we've kind of got this sort of strange hybrid between the two, where Bellator's still kind of around, but it's a little bit of a zombie promotion. It's kind of a bit like when Zuffa bought Strikeforce, and we're just kind of keeping it alive for... I believe there's contractual reasons in Europe as to why Bellator's still sticking around. I don't think the PFL tournaments themselves this year have been all that exciting. It was supposed to be a year, 2024, in my opinion, which really sort of announced the PFL as a serious number two. And I don't think they capitalised as much as what ideally I would like them to have done.
Yeah. I think all their fights, like the fights itself, the non-tournament fights I've watched, have been very fun. I watched their super fights earlier this year when they had, Bader and Fajeda. That card was pretty fun. I've been an Impa Kasangane fan admittingly. He's been fantastic, made a fan out of me. And so and Clay Collard's always a lot of fun. I think they're definitely the number two, and I'm kind of wondering what their plan is in the long term with Bellator. So it has me interested in that aspect. But and while I think they've done good this year, if I were to give them a grade, like a school teacher, I'd probably say B minus, because I feel like they could have just been so much more. And the fights itself were, like, the tournament fights haven't been great, but their non-tournament ones have been.
Do you think the tournament format can work in mixed martial arts?
Yeah, I think so. I think you also need. I don't think you need to just grab any old people. I have a weird pitch that I just came up with, so I didn't think about this very often. You could almost run Bellator as, and I don't mean to be derogative here. So I was going to say feeder league, but I think I have a better way. Going back to wrestling, you could almost treat it like an NXT type of thing, where champions if you're a champion, you have the option of vacating your belt and getting a number two, like getting like the bye round, to in the tournament, and you use Bellator to get the best of the best fighters into your tournament. So in a sense, like, you use Bellator to make your tournaments, to kind of weed out a lot of, like, oh, this guy's going to go 0-4 with no good fights, like in the tournament, like when they're the round robin section, like, what's the point of him? I think you can kind of do that. What's it called, like the strainer, when you're like straining pasta. In a sense, you can kind of do it like that, I suppose. And then I honestly have been really enjoying the super fights between Bellator champs and PFL tournament winners. I think that's actually been really fun. But I think one reason why I'm very much pro tournament is I'm a sucker for a good tournament. I blame the pride in me, the pride fan. And two, I love seeing fighters get paid. I like seeing fighters make that money.
Personally,
was it a Steve O'Connell?
I personally like it as well. I like the tournament format in terms of it gives them something to sell that the UFC aren't doing. Because I think you need to think, what are the PFL offering me as an MMA viewer, which the UFC aren't, and I think the tournament format is a way of doing that. The problem is, though, I think by putting people in the tournaments, you're asking them to fight 4 times a year, and there's some people that just can't make that turnaround. So it's kind of like an awkward middle ground, because unless you are going through the tournament, you can't be a PFL champion.
kind of awkward because you could make the argument that a guy like Rory McDonald is better in a sprint but not a marathon. That's why
Yeah.
he failed in the tournament. You know, that's kind of awkward. I think it's a different kind of. I think it different takes a different kind of stamina and endurance as a fighter to be in a tournament. You know, and I mean all kinds. Because having to fight 4 times a year, imagine Hamzat gets cut and goes to PFL.
He ain't fighting 4 times in a year.
He ain't fighting 4 times. He ain't fighting 4 times in 10 years. You know.
You do realize
Yeah,
we are setting ourselves up for really bad karma this month, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're gonna get demonetized in Chechnya.
I think I already have with the Kadyrov video.
Yeah, we're screwed. You know, we're screwed. They know where we live.
So we've got ourselves our main card here. You can
but-
see that on your screen right now. As mentioned before, we will be talking about the main and the co-main in a lot more detail, which are the fights which, for most casual fans, they're most interested in. But there are a lot of joys to be found on the rest of the card itself. In particular, that fight is going to be opening up the main card. A lot of people excited about this one. AJ McKee and Paul Hughes.
Oh yeah, that fight's gonna be fun. AJ McKee, being the son of Antonio McKee, you would expect him to beat shit. Speaking of boring grapplers, I feel like we got set up here. But yeah, it's the son of Antonio McKee, which for anyone that hasn't watched an Antonio McKee fight, I implore you to find a highlight reel video of him that isn't just him getting the one slam every 10 fights. He was like 42-0 or 1 on the indies, or like on like the regional shows and stuff like that. The UFC brings him in. He fights Jacob Volkman, loses a boring decision in Jacob Volkman, or then they cut him right there on the spot because it was boring and he lost. And Jacob Volkman then says he wants to fight then President Barack Obama and gets a visit from Secret Service. It is one of the funniest 48 hours in MMA history that no one talks about. I remember watching it live because it happened on one of my favorite cards ever,
Which we covered in the retro
125.
review.
One of my favorite cards of all time. Yeah, it's a really good one. Thiago Santos playing the DK the DK drum game on Brandon Barrett's
I
back.
love splicing that in there.
Really funny. I think it was Jungle Beat that game. I remember playing it at a friend's house. But yeah, AJ McKee fights nothing like his dad, and it's awesome. You know, because I remember at the time AJ McKee debuted and Baby Slice, which was Kimbo's kid, and people were like, "Oh, which one's gonna be more fun?" And I thought, wait a minute, AJ McKee's kid is fighting and he's head kicking and flying kneeing people. This makes no sense. Like, what's happening? You know, I don't know what happened to Baby Slice. I know he had a hard run of things for a while, but AJ McKee's been doing well. Former champion in Bellator. He beat the good Pitbull brother, because there's two.
I think he might have
one
been
isn't very good.
I think he might
The
have
other one is
beaten
very good.
Patrici as well. Or at least he was booked to fight Patrici at some point.
Yeah, I know he beat the good one, the one that's smaller but actually good. There's two of them, and they have like it's Patricio and Patrici. I always forget which one is which. I just know one of them's good, and the other one isn't, and they've both somehow knocked out Michael Chandler. Go figure. Yeah, AJ McKee, like, there was a lot of head kicks. He hurt the good Pitbull brother with a head kick, and then as he was getting up, he just, long, lanky dude gets a arm in guillotine and chokes him out like that. And they called it a fluke. They had a rematch, and he lost the decision to the more experienced guy who made the adjustments coming into the rematch, which, if you look at age and experience, you expect that to happen. Admittingly, I think that's a very understandable conclusion. But, I mean, he hasn't lost since. He's got a lot of upside.
He is a lot more... Because obviously that was his last fight at featherweight when he fought Patricio.
Yeah.
Since then he's gone up to lightweight. And I think there's still a lot of action. There's still a lot of entertainment factor in AJ. But I do think that the finishing rate has definitely slowed down. I think obviously fighting bigger opponents is going to do that to you. I just hope that what we did see against Pitbull hasn't taken away that kind of X factor that made AJ such an exciting fighter. Because there were some people saying that the UFC should take a chance on him.
I'm hoping so still. I would love to see him in the lightweight mix. Or the featherweight mix. Could you imagine, like, him and Yair Rodriguez at featherweight, like, main eventing, like, a fight night? Like, you could have Jasmine Jasuda Vicious on that co-main, and I'd be watching it.
Is this you horn dogging again?
No, I mean, I was like, what is a fighter I've seen watch way too many times for my lifetime? And she was the first name to come up. I apologize. Jasmine Jasuda Vicious. I was like, who have I seen fight too many times at the Apex this year? Ding!
Usually my go-to is Priscilla. She just seems to be on every card.
Yeah, I gouged at somebody.
But a lot of hype around Paul Hughes as well. So Paul Hughes, for a lot of people who don't know, was in Cage Warriors. He had a fantastic fight against Jordan Vucinic, who ended up going into the UFC himself. A lot of people thinking with Cage Warriors' connection to the UFC, he would be following him there. Instead, Bellator stroke PFL choose to snap him up. Got his first victory earlier in the year up against Bobby King. And now he's getting this big opportunity on a huge card for them.
Yeah,
not Bobby King Green.
Honest. That confused me when I was looking at it. When I was watching him this week.
Any opinions on Paul Hughes?
Okay. I watched him for the first time this week. I've always heard about him. He's always been like on the radar for me, but I've never had the opportunity or I guess the pleasure of watching him. He's a lot of fun too. I am kind of hurt that he didn't go to the UFC, and I'm. It's funny I say all this, and I've been like, oh no, like support PFL, like it's great, like I'm glad PFL's getting good guys, getting good prospects because I think that'll help in their long-term future. I think you want to have some big names to. I mean, I think how they're doing the match card for this card is A+. Like fantastic. Put those two in the main event. Put Cyborg and Pacheco in the co-main, and then let's build up these 6 names. And by association with it is a genius idea. So like they're not just getting like let's put Priscilla Cachoeira on the main card. Like they're not just doing that. They're getting genuinely great, good talent that's exciting and that has a future. So Paul Hughes, I'm pretty high on him too. I think if I had to pick, I'm more comfortable picking AJ McKee because I've seen more of him. I watched Paul Hughes for the first time this week, so it's kind of like recency bias is kind of what I feel like if I pick him. But at the same time, whoever wins, it has a very bright future ahead of him.
Another fight which is taking place is actually a title fight. Johnny Eblen is going to be taking on Fabian Edwards. Now, this was supposed to be a Bellator middleweight title fight. It was supposed to take place in the main event of the Bellator London card earlier this year. Unfortunately, injuries took their toll. It's been rescheduled for this one. These two actually fought a few years ago. Eblen won that one by unanimous decision. And we understand that the PFL, Bellator, going to have a smaller talent pool, and there's kind of local reasons for giving fighters certain talent matches. But do you see any reason for Fabian Edwards to be getting this rematch outside of we just needed someone?
Eblen KO'd him last year.
Ah, yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, I thought, I was like, it's like, no, it's like, was it decision or am I thinking of, of someone else? I thought I got mixed up.
I will double check for you.
Johnny Eblen KO'd him in the third round in Dublin last year at 299.
Yes. Yeah. I apologize.
It's the Bellator has a lot of cards and they're not memorable. Gotta get them. If they signed Valentina Shevchenko, it'd be even more forgettable. That one, I was trying too hard there.
I will say, with a UFC card, you can just say a number and you know exactly what happened on that card.
Yeah, me, I'm bad with numbers. I'm bad with the numbers, but if someone says this card, okay, and I had to think about it, and if you name one fight on it, it's like, yeah, I remember everything else on that card. I'm pretty bad about the numbers myself. You are amazing with numbers. I can name a fight, and you can tell me what card it was on, like to a T almost. It's amazing.
It's not amazing. It's alarmingly boring.
I think it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice whenever I need that quick reference guide, and I can kind of look into the camera and be like, Karl, yeah, that card, yeah.
So, any takeaways from the first Evelyn Edwards fight? Do you think there's enough value for a rematch?
Not really. I thought Evelyn was pretty much in control. I think a lot of it is I hate being this guy. Fabian, by the way, is very good fighter, but his brother is Leon Edwards. So I think that holds some weight because you know you're going to see him in the corner, even if he isn't champion anymore. That still gives you some weight. At the same time, I think Johnny Eblen just kind of had him figured out. You know, good old American wrestling with some power. I think it's interesting because I think Fabian has a higher finishing factor. You know, I think if there is a finish to come, funny enough, by the guy who got finished in the original fight, I think I could see Fabian getting a couple different finishes because he's got a pretty good knee, a couple good shots as well, and he isn't the worst grappler. But I do think Eblen probably wins a decision here to put the stamp because he's like very, very good as Bellator's middleweight champion.
Eblen's kind of your old-fashioned all-American wrestle boxer, like a Matt Hughes or a Chris Weidman type, just that kind of quintessential all-American style. Like if he was around sort of 2012, 2013, the UFC would love him.
In terms of fighter archetypes, that's probably one of my favorite cliche styles. Yeah. Wrestle boxer. I always like a good wrestle boxer.
Anybody else on the rest of the card that takes your fancy before we go to the main and the core main?
Javier Stott's got mentioned a lot recently in UFC because he has a pretty good chin, but Merab knocked him out with a spinning back fist, and Sean O'Malley kept bringing that up. So I randomly will never forget that little bit of knowledge.
And you know the great story about that? I mean, it's not great for Rafian's sake that he ended up getting finished, but Dana White does his series Looking for a Fight. And the story goes that he went to that regional show with the aim of signing Stotts. And Merab was just there as a sacrificial lamb. But then Merab gets the finish, Dana signs him. And the UFC don't even think about Stotts after that point. Which is ironic given that we know Dana White. Like, if you've ever seen Rafian Stott, he is a hell of a good trash talker. Like, Dana would love that kind of personality in the UFC. And Bellator arguably would appreciate Merab's sort of workhorse wrestling style a lot more than the UFC do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bellator appreciates those guys like that. You know, like, I think that was what, I mean, I'll say it. This one's only for me because he's from my hometown, and everything I say here is truth. Known mega douchebag, Rafael Lovato Jr. was he had to come across like a nice guy to get title shots. He is a douche. One of the more unlikable people I've met in my life. You remember that episode of Tough where, Karl Parisian keeps like grabbing like the nape of Nate's neck and like, what are you going on, man? Come on, man. I remember when I beat your brother. 110% that's Rafael Lovato Jr. He's such a dick. I've met him twice in my life. I like his dad a lot. His dad's a great guy. Senior? Thumbs up to Senior. Junior's a douche. My uncle was like, even looked at me and goes, Senior's cool. I don't like Junior. And I was like, oh, here's Junior.
So if you want an interview with us, you know where to go.
Yeah, come let's clear the air. Yeah. But like Austin Van Zant, as I think he prefers to be called. Austin Vanderford, like he, tried to talk a little bit. It didn't really work out for him. I feel like those are guys that are like more prime for the UFC, like in Hoffy and Stotts, like going crazy. It's like, it's kind of weird seeing you in Bellator talk crap, like without Chael. Like, who is here to talk crap? Like, and it just doesn't translate well. I feel like in Bellator, they really much appreciate their, soft, quiet Caucasus Mountains type of guys. Um, and Johnny Evelyn, I really like him. Oh yeah, with Hoffy and Stotts, it's super funny when you think about that Marab thing, right? Because Dana White was like, "I'm looking for a freaking fight, you goof!" Like on that show. I think that was the full title. Um, and he signs Marab on that fight, and he has no idea that he is in the future killing an unproven cash cow in his mind. He has no idea he just signed like one of the angriest he'll ever be after a fight, because his face when he has to give Marab the belt is I live for those moments.
And bearing in mind as well the grievances he has with Serra Longo as well.
Oh yeah, I live for those moments. My favorite of all time is still Stipe beating Francis, like in that. Like, he looks like he would rather be anywhere else in the world, and I love it. It's the greatest thing ever.
I do want to give a shout out to a guy who I've actually seen fight in person. Now, I've only ever been to 2 MMA events, but I did actually see this guy when I was at the Newcastle card. Ibrahim, if I could pronounce his name. It's the problem with all these Caucasus names, I'm afraid. Ibrahimov. 7-0, just 20 years old. I believe he trains in Manchester, so he's going to be fighting in Saudi Arabia this time. And he made absolute easy work of his opponent when I saw him on the PFL card. With that being said, he is more on the Makayev side of grappling, so there is I'd err on the side of caution, but 7-0 at 20 years old, a lot of promise.
You gotta love it. I think there's something... I think it's something really good when you have a lot of young, promising talent on your card. So for PFL wanting to be in the conversation with the UFC, I think the framework is at least there.
Because as well, I think that one of the issues that Bellator had was being seen as sort of like a retirement home for old UFC fighters. By having its own talent and its homegrown talent, you're not applying that to the PFL as much.
Yeah. It's also a good thing, I think, when talent comes in and loses. I know that might sound painful, but guys like Anthony Pettis, Jeremy Stevens coming into PFL thinking they're going to make him... Shane Burgos coming in think they're going to make $1 million, and Clay Collard beats all three. I think that's a good thing. I think that's, because Clay Collard didn't win the lightweight tournament, And I think... that's a good thing. I think that shows that, hey, no, we're legit. We're not just here for big signings to come in and take our $1 million and leave.
Someone said it with the PFL in terms of the fighters that they recruit, is in that I think the UFC on the whole, their sort of recruitment style is split into 2 forms. It's either getting the absolute best elite of the elite, or guys to fill out Apex cards. They're not filling that middle ground anymore. The middle ground is in the PFL.
Absolutely, yeah. I honestly think 90% of the PFL could beat almost every fighter who isn't ranked, like in the UFC, without fail. And I think most of them, maybe even up to top 10. I think PFL's gotten very good. I don't know about if they could have their own guys enter the top 5 yet. Because maybe that's the old UFC fan in me, but the mountain is really high in that top 5 in almost every division, unless you're women's bantamweight.
Justice for Rocky. Hashtag Justice for Rocky.
Rocky and Aldo.
Yeah. Like, in any other weight class, there would be a big call out for them to run that fight back because of how controversial it was. But I think the combination of the fight itself not being great and Caleb being around, it's a bit kind of, oh dear, house side, never mind.
Hard. it's really awkward. You know, I I feel so bad. I also think it's the funniest thing of all time that they put a live mic in front of Juliana Pena. She just has to say the magic words like, Kayla Harrison, you're taking everything I work for. Like, you, that's all she has to say. Just rip off Nate Diaz, whatever. And instead, like a jilted ex-lover, Amanda Nunes, you're a coward. I'm like, oh my god. And now Amanda might come back, smoke Pena again, and probably leave before the Kayla Harrison match, putting this whole thing. It is. This is all Julie. I don't know who to blame. Actually, I do. This is Juliana Pena's fault, and those judges. Those because Rocket clearly won. I think. I don't think it was a. I was confused when one judge gave it to Pena. I went, uh-oh, and then I went, are we gonna do this again? And they did. I was like, oh. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Hopefully, though, this women's encounter, which we're going to be talking about, will not be bad. A lot of people actually think it could be a very, very intriguing matchup. So we're going to be talking about the core men on this card, which is the women's MMA legend Cris Cyborg, who is going to be taking on Larissa Pacheco. Now, the betting odds for this one, I have been really interested in, which is that Larissa Pacheco enters the fight as a minus 155 favourite. This is significant because I've been doing a little bit of research, and the last time the Cris Cyborg entered a fight as the betting underdog was in 2008 when she fought Shayna Baszler in Elite XC, which was Cyborg's first ever fight in America.
Wow. That's actually crazy impressive. What a run. I'm surprised she was the favorite against Gina Carano. With the hype machine around.
Yeah, Gina
Carano.
had the hype, but I think people deep down knew that Gina was maybe going to be a little bit over her head.
Yeah. Gina could have won, but she stood up.
Not the last time Gina made a decision which damaged her career.
Yeah, not the last either. You know? That said.
Yeah.
Beautiful woman.
If you review Terror on the Prairie on the Patreon page, she might.
You know what? I'll give it a glowing review, just for a coffee. You know, like Oscar-worthy performance from Gina Carano. Joe, you didn't look at the camera at all when you said that. I don't want to laugh. I don't want them to see my lying eyes. This fight is nuts. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I feel like you could sell this card on this fight, like without the main event. Like that main event fight wasn't there. This was the main event instead. I think you got
not a pay-per-view, but it could headline a PFL card.
Oh, yeah. This fight's ridiculous. Because two insane finishers. You know, Pacheco, a lot of finishes, majority of finishes. I think she only has like 2 or 3 decisions. And then it's Cyborg, who has 21 KOs. Now, a lot of people, and Cyborg is kind of like, I have Cyborg in the top 2 of GOATs. I think that's a fair compromise between us. She could be 1.
I have seen a lot of people make the argument that she's number 1. And to be fair, I do understand the argument, because I think if you're somebody who puts Cyborg number 1, I think you value her longevity. You value her evolution as a fighter, that she's always changing, always adapting. The long reign of dominance that she had, and she never got outboxed by Juliana Pena. Because I think the argument as well that a lot of people take, I'd say that one is a joke, obviously, but like that is 13 years of dominance from Cyborg when she was on top. That's 13 years of tape. And the fact you had one person manage to break that, that's impressive for me. And that was a lottery as well. Basically, the way that played out, that fight was a lottery.
That I was not expecting. I had to mute myself. Oh my god. Oh, like eyes were watering. I was trying not to laugh so. Caught me off guard. I had a response, a good one too, and I lost it because I was laughing too. Um, you know, I mean, I think with Cyborg is I think it didn't take as long. I think the big argument, if you're gonna pick her over Nunes, the big argument that I can almost buy into is it didn't take Cyborg nearly as long to become Cyborg. It took Nunes a long time to become the Lioness.
Yeah,
You know
because
what I
there
mean?
was a lot of,
Uh,
and a lot of people do bring that up as well. You bring up the Zingano fight, you bring up Alexis Davis, you bring Sarah
Julia
Delelio.
Budd. Yeah, Julia Budd as well, right?
No, not Bud.
No, was it? It was Sarah Delelio that 30-25 her in Invicta then.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
That her? Yeah, yeah. So it took Nunes a while to become the Lioness, and then when she did, oh, like it took a while. But in fairness to in the sport, it took Panchenko
it
a long
did.
time to become
It did.
to become her. It took her a while. I remember her getting beat by short-haired Macy
Like,
Chiasson on
if you
Tough.
actually look at Pacheco's record and the people she's lost to,
Hmm.
she's lost to some pretty good names:
Good
Jermaine
names.
Durandamy, Jessica Andrade, and Kayla twice.
Yeah. Yeah, like those are four people who perennial top tens, and I'm only saying that because GDR and is hasn't fought in 15 years, and um, Jessica Andrade is kind of at the end of her career, but probably still top 10. Let's be honest. Um, and like Kayla twice. I listen, as women in the UFC are finding out, Kayla Harrison is a problem, and it's not like she's 0-2 against Kayla Harrison. She's 1-2 against Kayla Harrison. Won their most recent fight, you know. And one of the biggest upsets I've been at the pleasure of. I didn't watch it at the time. I went out with some friends, but when I got home, I watched. I didn't, and I'll tell you exactly why I didn't watch it because I went, oh, because Kayla's gonna kill this chick again. Like as good as Panchenko has gotten, I don't see it. Like it's 3-0. Like no one's beating Kayla Harrison except Nunes. And then oh, was my mind. Uh, she's gotten insanely good. Like she's scary. Like she's way too big to be in the UFC because 145 doesn't exist. They don't have a 55. Um, it's she's going to be. I think she's going to be the new Cyborg in the sense that for a long time when the UFC didn't have 145, they were like Cyborg can't make 135. You know, like as Ronda's talking crap through the fence. I had to bring it up. It was happening. It was happening. I thought it was weird. I was a Ronda fan at the time, and I thought, stop picking fights with the dog through the fence. That can't get through. And I think that's what her destiny kind of is. I think we've kind of seen it, like where she's gonna. This is almost in a way potentially be a passing of the torch moment.
I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way as well, because obviously with Cyborg, 27-2 record, but she is 39 years old. Which I think obviously when it comes to the heavier weight classes, age isn't as much of a factor. We'll obviously talk about that when we come to the main event. But I think when you do reach 39 years old, regardless of what you do athletically, it does start to take a toll. And I think what hasn't helped matters as well is that Chris's last fight was in October last year. She fought Kat Zingano, made comfortable work of her. And during that time, what's she been doing? She's been fighting influencers in boxing matches.
Has she?
Yes.
Like, actually? Hi.
Many. Like, she was in London. There was a card in
Actually.
London. I'm not sure who headlined it, but there was like a influencer boxing card in London, and she fought some girl on there.
Yeah, like here she is, like fighting money. Yeah, sure. She has the highest performing Holly Holm fight in terms of pay-per-view buys?
Well, the Ronda one, obviously.
Well, I
True,
thought that
yeah.
fight doesn't exist. I got him, boys.
I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. I can
but
take it on the chin. It
uh,
happens.
hey, I listen. You're more of a man than me because I still deny that Aldo McGregor happened. Prove me wrong, boys. I don't see it happen. And for anyone that doesn't know, this whole bit is a Return of the Dragon reference. I'm a big Bruce Lee fan, so I had to reference
That being
his
said,
movies when I can.
I
Yeah.
will. I often use Cyborg versus Holly as the argument because there's a lot of people that think that women's MMA could only sell because of Ronda.
Yeah. Cyborg
Massive
was a huge
draw.
draw.
And I think people,
Yeah.
it's because of the Dana White narrative, don't allow themselves to acknowledge that anymore.
Yeah. I, you know what? If anyone counts, and I personally don't, but I understand if people do. They count your buy rate and your drawing power as part of their overall legacy and GOAT contention. Cyborg definitely has a much better argument for GOAT than Amanda Nunes because Amanda wasn't no draw. Cyborg
I will
was.
say it has been. I will say
You
it
know?
has been funny. Like obviously you touched on it with some of Julie's comments. It is funny seeing some of the people online trying to argue that the best way to revive fan interest in women's 135 is bringing back Nunes. It's like you didn't make that fuss when she was around first time. It's like those people who complain when Blockbuster went out of business when they hadn't been for like a decade.
You don't know what you had until it's gone. You know, that's how it is for me with George St. Pierre. I hated George St. Pierre. Then he retired, and I found myself longing for the shortest of shorts and the baldest of heads.
So we're gonna get to some. We're gonna get
Good
to
man,
some
I
of the
swear.
X's and O's in regards to both fighters here. We'll start with Cyborg in a bit more detail. So outside of her win with Kat Zingano, you've got 2 wins over Leslie Smith, 2 wins over Arlene Blencoe, Julia Budd, Felicia Spencer, Holly Holm, as you touched on there, Marlis Coonan, she also beat twice, Gina Carano, and Shayna Baszler. So a lot of the sort of who's who when it comes to the early days of women's MMA, some of the more prominent 145ers. Where do you personally think? A lot of people try and frame the idea of Cyborg as just being this big brute that just steamrolls through everyone. Where do you think the real technique is when it comes to Cyborg? Because I think there's a lot more to her than just being this sort of She-Hulk figure that some people like to make her out to be.
So I think a lot of people have likened her, and sometimes in a derogatory way, to Vanderlei Silva. And here, I think the comparison is pretty fair in terms of fighting style, but with one difference. So I think in the open, Vanderlei will get frustrated if he can't hurt you and start the finishing sequence. And in the finishing sequence, he is the axe murderer. That the axe is coming, kind of horror movie type scenario inside of it. But he's a little wild and he can be caught. We saw that in the Dan Henderson fights, both of them. Cris Cyborg is a little bit cleaner in the open area, and when she does get the finish, or when she does hurt the opponent and she goes for the finish, it's very tight. It's very precise. She's not just gunning for the head. She's attacking the head, the body, even the legs sometimes. Normally, when she puts people out, like by TKOs them, just overwhelms them, it isn't just because she's headhunting. It's because, oh, you're blocking high. I'm going to kick you low to stop you from trying to move away. I'll knee you in the body. And like other shots. Like she's pretty, you could almost say composed in there in comparison. I think on the ground, she's pretty good defensively, but she's not a headhunter. She's attacking the body. She's going to attack low. Her and everything she throws hurts big time. In terms of power, number one, she is the Alex Pajeda of power in women's divisions for sure. Actually, that's not a horrible comparison, admittingly, because Pereira, very technical on the feet. Cyborg, I'm not saying she's that technical on the feet. I think I always found Amanda Nunes to be a little bit cleaner on the feet, at least in the open. But kind of like whenever it's hurt, the finishing sequence we saw last week from Alex Pereira was probably the most aggressive he'd been in a while. That was almost Cyborg-esque in how he would attack the body and then use it to open up shots to the head, use a knee or a shot up the middle to make them lean forward into an uppercut or a knee. Very Cyborg-esque. Cyborg, if you look at her Wikipedia or Tapology, whatever site you use, you'll see lots of finishes with knees to the body. And it's because when she's punching you, everyone kind of does this and kind of curls up, just hoping to stop the blows. And she'll just step in and basically knee you right in the solar plex through the body. Like, she has to be Boss Rutan's favorite fighter ever, female fighter ever. Like, liver shots galore with her.
You mentioning that in sort of like the description, the one that comes to mind for me was Julia Budd.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw Cyborg fight live, because I had watched her for a while, but I never saw her fight live, and it was Jan Finney, and I will never forget that fight.
Poor Jan Finney.
To the day I die, she need Jan Finney so hard that she broke the ponytail, like in the braid, like the hairband she had in her head popped off, and that is one of the worst reffings I have ever seen. Winslow was horrible.
That was the Theodore Verdum card, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I remember that's another fight I will never forget. Like seeing Russian Superman lose to Doomsday is kind of insane.
The other thing that's really comes to mind as well when it comes to Cyborg, I mean, a lot of people, quite rightly, make a big deal about her power and her striking. I think people forget how good of a grappler Cyborg is.
Yeah. Like, she's not a Pereira on the ground. She just doesn't go there. But, like, because she doesn't have to. The fight starts on the feet. She's gonna most likely kill you before you get it to the ground. But if you get her on her back, she aggressively stands up, like, and very well. It isn't like a Derek Lewis situation. Like, she's techniquing her way to her feet. She'll wall walk. In the clinch, she's very, very capable. And if she's on top, she kind of has that, like, Brazilian wrestling is what I always jokingly refer to it as. Because you remember how, like, Shogun, Vanderlei, they would take you down sometimes and, I'm just going to sit in half guard and maul you. And Cyborg's kind of in that similar style, very shoot-to-box-esque.
Like, if you get the chance, watch her in Bellator just chucking around Leslie Smith.
Horrifying. I had a Rocky IV moment. Throw in the damn towel, Rock.
Yeah. To be fair, Leslie nearly made the distance. Leslie Smith's game is hell.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of. She should be in everyone's gal stable because she's pro fighter pay.
True.
Yeah. Which is important.
So, two sides of this fight, though. We're going to focus on the second here, which is Larissa Pacheco. Now, her last fight, it was only a month after Cyborg's last, so a lot of people making a big deal about Cyborg's inactivity. You can maybe say the same thing about Pacheco. In her last fight, she fought Maria Mokhnatina, who is actually the wife of Sergei Spivak. Yes.
Oh, really?
Good for you, Sergei. Yeah, which was a decision win, and I think a lot of people expected that to be a lot more one-sided than it was. I think Marina did have some moments in that fight. Very good leg locker, Marina, and I think she caught Pacheco a little bit off guard with some of her attacks. Easy enough, Pacheco.
I think she got hurt.
Easy enough, Pacheco win, but Marina did have her moments. And outside of Marina, there's also wins over Julia Budd, Kayla Harrison, as we touched on before, Sarah Kaufman, Carol Hoser, and Irene Aldana before she entered the UFC. What I think's most interesting in regards to Larissa Pacheco, though, was something that you touched on here. This is a fighter who was rejected by the UFC twice. She came in as a bantamweight, lost the first 2 fights and ended up getting released. When they brought back the featherweights for 2018, I think it was, came back into tough, lost her opening round fight to Macy, and again the UFC chose not to give her a contract. And yet here she sits right now, going into the biggest fight of her career, 2-time millionaire, and you can maybe make an argument that if she wins this fight, she's definitely top 5 pound for pound in the world.
Absolutely. If she wins this fight, she's already made more money than she would have if she had a successful UFC career. I'm sorry. Like $2 million. I'm going to be honest. I don't think Amanda Nunes made $2 million in 4 title defenses. UFC doesn't pay any fighters well, let alone fighters in female divisions that aren't drawing money in. You know, like Nunes wasn't a draw. That's got to affect the bottom line of the pay. You know, I highly doubt she was making that kind of money. And if she was, good on you. Hell yeah. Like, you know, it's never a bad thing if they were making it. If she gets this, what a career, you know? What a career turnaround. 2-time reject from the UFC, and I'm sure Dana's going to bring that up if he feels a little threatened. But this is a huge potential passing of the torch moment. And sadly, I hate being this person. If she wins, you're going to have to get used to Dana talking crap on you. Because Cyborg had to put up with that shit had to put up with that crap for decades, it felt like. Larissa's probably going to have to also. But, you know, at the end of the day, Larissa can be like, well, I beat your bantamweight champion. You know, I mean, if Caleb wins the belt, she could sit there and be like, yeah, I'm the reason she's not unbeaten. You know? Because, I mean, I remember this, you and me talked about it a lot. If Kayla Harrison made it 3-0 against Larissa, she was going to go to the UFC, fight Amanda Nunes. She's the wrench in all those plans. It's awesome.
So if Pacheco is going to take the torch, how's she going to do it?
I hate being this person, but at 39 years of age, your durability has to get worn down. And Pacheco isn't like a technical striker. She isn't going to, you know, light you up on the feet with, like, you know, a careful jab, expertly executed, like jabbing and off the jab, throwing a left hook to the body. She's going to beat you like that. She's kind of a meat and potatoes, but with a lot of power. I have lovingly referred to her as the Stipe Miocic of women's featherweight. I don't know if you see that as well. Like a lot of power, but very kind of meat and potatoes styling. But actually, unironically, a very good ground game. Like, that is something I didn't mention. I've always been very impressed with her grappling. Like, it seems very sound defensively, and offensively, it seems like she knows what to do really well. I mean, getting Kayla Harrison off you is no joke, you know, or defending those takedowns. But I think at this point in time, you know, each person's chin's going to get tested, and I have more faith in Pacheco's chin than I have Cyborg's chin. I think you could see a Cyborg getting stopped, you know, because I mean, at 39 years of age, you have to be slowing down.
Which is why I'm going to take a little bit of a hot take here. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Cris goes grappling heavy.
I
say this as well for a few reasons. One, I think that Cris obviously realizes she's going to be fighting a big power puncher. So she's maybe going to be a little bit more careful, maybe try things a little bit different to how she normally does. I think there have been improvements in Chris's grappling, which we have seen in the past couple of fights. And also as well, I think that, yes, Pacheco showed some great takedown defense against Kayla in the third fight. But Dan Hardy pointed this out, and I want to give a big shout out to Dan Hardy. He's one of the best analysts in this game. He did a breakdown of some of Pacheco's grappling, and he said that what Larissa's very good at is stuffing the initial takedown, but she has a tendency to make mistakes after she initially stuffs it, because there were times in the second Kayla fight, and at times in the third as well, Pacheco would stuff the initial takedown, and rather than sort of like spin away and try and make sure the fight gets back to the feet, she's trying to get a run sub, or she's trying to sprawl, and that just allowed Kayla the opportunity to sort of like reverse it and end up on top. And I think that's maybe an avenue for Chris. Like, if I genuinely do believe that if Chris goes grappling heavy, we could see maybe some of those mistakes in Pacheco's grappling come to the fore.
Mm-hmm. How do you think Pacheco's gas tank is?
It seems solid enough, in my opinion. Obviously,
yeah,
because
a body-heavy attack from Cyborg definitely.
That is a good point, actually. No, but I mean, Pacheco's built like a truck. I don't have any issues when it comes in regards to the conditioning of Pacheco, because I mean, she went 5 rounds for Kayla. She's actually been 5 rounds twice.
Exhausting.
Still seemed to be doing decent enough in the 5th round. She's gone 5 rounds again when she fought Markvatina. And I think as well, there's a lot of people don't appreciate how stressful thinking is. Like, if you're facing someone who you know can shoot for a takedown at any point, it stresses you out. And it can exhaust you. Yeah. And Pacheco was able to overcome that as well.
I don't think people realize how stress just drains your gas tank. I've seen guys who are like some of the best athletes cardio wise I've ever, like friends of mine that have insane cardio. We could play football or basketball for hours and like they're never tired. And then I remember grappling with one of my friends once, my friend Devin, and you would have thought he just crossed like the desert or something. Like he could not, like it's almost a different type of stamina. And that's a good, that doesn't give me any, that helps kind of quell some of the little doubts I have of Pacheco, but I still I think I'm going to go Pacheco here. I think she can.
I'm going to say Pacheco as well. And I hate to say that because I'm somebody who really respects Cyborg, but Father Time does get the best out of everyone. And look, 39 years old, still considered one of the best female fighters of all time. Cris Cyborg would have nothing to be ashamed of.
If she calls it quits after this fight, she's like, she kind of gets put in that Jose Aldo GSP section of greatness where you're either 1 or 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're 1 or 2 ever. A lot of people, like 50% of the world are going to say you're 1, other 50% are going to say you're 2. Like, and I mean, I think, she's what a unbelievable pioneer for the sport. And sadly a victim of a lot of bullying, which isn't cool. Let's be honest. It's pretty not cool, but
yeah,
what a legend, absolute legend. And she beat Holly Holm, which I'll always love her for that. Actually, a good Holly Holm fight, unironically.
I say that though, but I think that was the first fight we did see Holly Holming at its most prevalent.
Yeah, she tried at least. You can't do it. It's funny. I've always heard people say, everyone always compares, Cyborg to Vanderlei, and sometimes derogatory, as I always point out. But who actually is much more Vanderlei than Cyborg, and probably even more Vanderlei than Vanderlei ever was? Jessica Andrade. I only thought about it because
I love Andrade. She's one of my favorite female fighters
ever. Yeah, me too. I think she's a lot of people's favorites. If anyone hasn't seen it, every time this name comes up, I always bring it up. You gotta watch Claudia Gadelha versus Jessica Andrade. Probably the best.
I was talking about that fight earlier today.
Probably the best women's fight of all time. Like, it's amazing. I'm a big fan of Jessica Andrade, Angela Hill also, but Claudia and Jessica Andrade is up.
So we're going to be talking about our main event of this card, and the baddest man on the planet is back. Francis Ngannou returns to MMA after a near 3-year absence, and he's going to be taking on the PFL heavyweight champion Renan Ferreira. So we're going to talk about the sort of X's and O's in regards to Francis joining the PFL. So where were you when you heard the news? And what sort of impact do you feel looking back on it now? Do you feel that Francis going to the PFL was that big jolt in the arm that some people thought it was going to be?
I can answer this in a couple of quick sections. I was at home on the front porch smoking a cigarette with my best friend. My roommate, smoking a cigarette with him when we heard Francis was not getting re-signed. And we went, wow. Like, that is, like, what a fumble, And I think I was talking with you when they, officially made it Cyril Gane, John Jones, instead of Francis John Jones. And I went, John Jones is in tears laughing at how much he got off there. Because in my brain still, there is no chance in any reality that John Jones would have beat Francis at that time. Francis is a terrifying human being, and still, by definition, the baddest man on the planet. I'm glad you're calling him that, as he deserves it.
Well, one of the things I remember saying when they announced that it was going to be Gane versus Jones, and this probably sounds really silly in hindsight now, but I remember saying it should have been John Jones versus Curtis Blades, because Curtis Blades has a better chance of beating John Jones.
Fun fact about me, one of the worst predictions I've ever gotten wrong. I thought, as long as Cyril Gane doesn't do anything stupid and give up his hips for a takedown, he should smoke John Jones on the feet, because I don't think he'll get taken down unless he does something really stupid. What's he do 5 seconds into the fight? Something really stupid, and then gives up his neck. I will never forgive Cyril Gane for that, because it's Cyril Gane's fault we've had to deal with Dana talking about if you put Francis Ngannou and Renan Ferreira in a room, and John Jones is in that room.
And I'll maybe make the argument as well that, look, I don't know how many pay-per-view buys 285 did, which was like the John Jones versus Cyril Gane. But bearing in mind that we've been waiting for nearly 2 years for John Jones to return, like, you've had one big John Jones payday from that event, and that's been it. Francis could have fought 2 or 3 times in that calendar year, another 2 times after that. So you lost out on 5 big paydays by not committing to Francis. And
PFL let him box too, And from what I understand, the PFL, or whatever their parent company is, or whoever owns it now, I think they co-promoted those Fury and Joshua fights with DAZN.
Yeah.
I believe they had something to do with that. Could you imagine if the UFC just let them do that? How that would have been 2 massive paychecks they would have gotten. Massive. Because everyone I know bought Fury and Ngannou. They didn't buy Kamaru Usman and Chimaev, because I think that was the same night.
It was definitely around the same time,
wasn't it? Yeah, I think they were the same night. And everyone I know bought Ngannou, Tyson Fury.
And I'm glad you brought up those 2 boxing matches as well, because in particular I want to talk about the second one, the Anthony Joshua fight, which was earlier this year. Did that fight, in a strange way, inadvertently make Ngannou versus Ferreira more intriguing? Because an argument could be made that when this fight was first announced that Ngannou was going to be fighting the PFL champion, even though I do think there's some good things about Renan Ferreira, it should be a fight that Francis Ngannou would have steamrolled. But since then, we've had the Anthony Joshua fight, we've had a big KO loss, and we can't sort of hide the fact that that was brutal, what Francis went through that night. And at 38 years old, first time in MMA for a long time, it's added that little extra seed of doubt that wasn't there beforehand.
Yeah, I I think kind of weird. You know, I think it kind of put the doubt in my mind a little bit to where I go, uh-oh. Like, because I picked Ngannou to beat Joshua. I thought of the big three, I thought Joshua was the second most technical, but probably the worst out of him, Wilder, and Fury. Back when they were talking about the big three all the time, and I was like, oh yeah, like I thought Francis beat Tyson Fury. Like, this guy pulled it off, and judges in boxing are going to be judges in boxing. Just kind of how it is, Um, and it was horrible, like a vicious KO. I think that's what you described it as. Yeah, it's hard to watch if you're a Francis fan, which I am. I wasn't a Francis fan until he started feuding with Dana White. It turns out the right heel will get any baby face over. Um, and but yeah, man, it kind of has me worried about this one because this guy hits hard too. And now, the first time you see someone get KO'd, you know, I think you kind of always have that fear in the back of your mind. Like if Francis would have lost a decision, I wouldn't be as worried. But he lost a gnarly
So
KO.
we already know in great detail about Francis Ngannou. So what we're going to do is we're going to be focusing on the opponent first, because there's going to be a lot of people that don't know too much about Renan Ferreira. A 13-3 record. His
Yeah.
last win was against the Bellator champion, Ryan Bader, which he made comfortable work of that one. Yes, I think Bader was maybe past his prime going into that fight. Not much outside of that though. Dennis Goltsov, Maurice Green, who's actually one of John Jones's training partners. Do you feel
Yeah.
like deep down, and again, no disrespect to Renan Ferreira, do you feel like he was kind of a last resort for Francis's first opponent?
You know who I thought they were gonna do
I bet
for
you're
a
thinking.
while
I bet you're
was
thinking the same name
Verdum.
I am.
Verdum.
Uh,
I thought they were gonna do Verdum
well, my
originally
thought was because there was a lot of
for a
rumors
while.
about this because he was on the last fight of his UFC contract. I think they wanted Derek Lewis.
I said that should have happened. I remember saying that they were like, just go to PFL, make crazy money, and go fight Francis again. Because in my opinion, there's no way it could be worse. Only upside to fighting him again. Like, listen, it ain't gonna be as bad as last time, Like where Derek fought with a broken back, and Francis legitimately was, and it's like having stage fright because Stipe did Stipe things to him. Like, no, like, I thought it was gonna be Verdum if they couldn't get that because, uh, funny enough, everyone might. I was like, is this the same guy? Whenever they announced this fight, and it is. Um, Everyone might remember the Verdum controversy when he came in the PFL. He had a triangle choke, and then he lets go for some
The
reason, and then he
Brazilian
gets
tap.
TKO'd. Yeah, Fajeda Brazilian tapped him, and it's a very clear tap. And Fajeda's the guy. This guy has 3 no contests. It's kind of funny, and not all of it is his fault. He, 2 of them are for dudes getting popping hot. Taking the John Jones training method. I thought you said he only fought one of his training partners. Jesus. Um, but he's on a 4-fight win streak. All of them KOs, and he has a lot of sub 1 minute KOs. Like, he puts guys away. He's a good kicker. He's a good puncher. Like, got solid Brazilian, like just a solid Brazilian striker.
And at six
In a
foot eight,
sense.
he's also the biggest
Uh,
opponent Francis has ever fought.
this kind of reminds me of back in the day? Like, kind of reminds me of like Fedor fighting like Zuluzinho on like New Year's Eve. You know what I mean? Kind of reminds me of that because this guy is huge. This guy is a monster. What's his
The
nickname? The
problem.
Problem. That's That's a cool nickname, by the way. And it's pretty accurate. This dude is a problem. Yeah, this dude's scary. Just like seeing a 6'8" heavyweight throw front kicks to the face is not something you.
Neither do I, because it means he's going to double leg straight away.
Well, that's true. If he wants to win, he will. That's if he wants to
Actually,
win.
you brought up something there. Like the next fight that Derek Lewis had after re-signing with the UFC, because there was the rumor that he was going to go to the PFL. He then re-signs, and the UFC repay him by putting him against Jilton. Thanks.
Do you want to? How's your push kick defense? Why? If he wants to win, like, he'll do that, but that's why he got knocked out in the second round against Curtis Blades. Fun fact. He didn't throw a snap kick, he just went for a double. Yeah. If he would have stuck to the game plan, he might have got him.
And I will say, though, that if Renan Ferreira was to fight Jilton Almeida, I think he might be in for a long night, because the big thing I've noticed about this guy, I think in terms of striking,
can't wrestle.
Very good. Good use of feints, combinations, sneaky uppercut as well, which a lot of people think is one of his best weapons. But this guy just does not have the grappling defense.
No, this guy couldn't grapple his way out of a Alex Bejeda grappling match.
I think he'd be. I think he'd be better than Pereira. I think so.
I'd pay to watch this.
You know how people make that meme about wrestlers having a kickboxing match? Would this be the first example of two strikers having a grappling match?
Absolutely. If we could a Kurt Angle, prime Kurt Angle having a kickboxing match against prime Iron Sheik in the co-main in the main event, and then the co-main event is Renan Ferreira versus Alex Bejeda in a jiu-jitsu match.
That being said,
let's see.
This comes to mind for me, and I think it's because I saw a BBC article where they were talking about her. But do you remember when Heather Hardy had that sort of brief MMA career?
Yeah.
She fought this other boxer, and people were expecting it's going to be forearms, gloves, great striking match between two women boxers, and it turns into a grappling match. It's one of the sloppiest wrestling matches you have ever seen.
Trying to think of the polite way to say it. It looked like a fight I would watch back at high school between two kind of, for lack of better words, scraggly chicks fighting over that random guy who sells drugs in high school. That was a part of my high school experience. There's that one random guy who is selling weed to everybody in high school, and what's it called? Then there's 4 out of 10 chicks that are gonna fight over him because he's cheating on both of them with each other. That was a thing in high school that would happen once a year. It was almost like a yearly ritual. It was an incredibly boring fight, and everyone was so hyped for Heather Hardy to because you look at her, and she's a boxer. People were so. I think it was Bellator. Yeah. Yeah, everyone was so hyped, and that's why I remember at that point I called up my girlfriend at the time, Ebony Bridges, and I said, cancel your MMA fight. Yeah.
In all fairness, Ebony, decent boxing career.
You know what? I'm proud of her, I remember seeing her, and I went, is this a Paige Van Zandt thing? Where the gimmick is you're attractive? And I went, no, she's not bad.
Yeah. Leeds United fan, though.
Oof. And married. Oof.
And I bring up that grappling concerns with Renan Ferreira because, and again, maybe it's because I've got wrestling on my mind. We remember what Francis Ngannou did to Cyril Gane.
Mm-hmm. He was Francis Nurmagomedov for 3 rounds. Yeah.
What did you think of? What did you think of Francis from a grappling perspective? Do you think he was good on the ground, or do you think it was just sort of the circumstances said he needed to do this to win?
His wrestling was actually pretty good. Like at getting to the ground, he was pretty good, but he kind of found himself in some bad situations. The fact that he did that on 2 torn ACLs is insane, though. Like, that's where I go, wow. The UFC made him fight while he was injured, and he was doing this. Like it's kind. I thought he found himself in some leg entanglements with Cyril Gahn, who's kind of aggressive whenever he can try and snatch a leg, you know. It's funny. He's on the ground. Cyril Gahn is known for 2 things, like getting leg locks and giving up his neck. I wish he would have leg locked Sean Jones. But Francis on the ground, like his takedowns and slams were pretty good. I was pretty impressed with him. People were calling him Francis Nurmagomedov.
I saw the photoshops with him with the chin strap.
Francis was saying, no, I'm Francis Usman, because he was training. That's where he learned to wrestle, was Kamaru Usman. And I was like, no. You were actually entertaining. So you were definitely Nurmagomedov. Kamaru Usman of the wrestlers was boring.
Kamaru's probably the only person I can think of. You know how there's always that meme that when a champion gets the belt, they start fighting not to lose?
Yeah, he's a...
Yeah. Like, weird. Title Usman is so much more entertaining than Usman without the belt.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's because he stopped training at Sanford and went to Trevor Whitman almost full time. Because he was remember he was doing like 50-50 splits before that? And then it was like 75-25 Whitman. And I went, hey, what? You go to Trevor Whitman, I guess. I guess that's the guy you go to. Yeah.
So the reputation of Francis Ngannou on the feet has always been just sort of like big one-shot power. Is there more to him than just the power?
He's actually got decent aggressive footwork, and off of a counter, he's got a good check left hook, honestly. He's at his best when he's kind of sized you up and shoulder feinted his way in, because he understands what openings there are. He's also very much aware that blocking in MMA and honestly in combat sports in general, unless you're using like your elbow or your shoulder, like thick bone, blocking with like forearms and gloves doesn't work out well. He knows that like if he thinks you're gonna put your hand up to cover up, he's just gonna punch anyways and bomb on it because he knows it's still gonna suck. Which I personally am a big fan of. He does a lot. He'll throw some punches that like you don't see, like, because he's very much like a brawler, but he's like almost like an intelligent brawler. He's like dare I say, a thinking man's brawler.
I love the pipe.
I do it so I don't like because I'm a chain smoker, like I'm either vaping or smoking a cigarette, and I do this so I won't have the urges like during while we shoot and film. Plus, it looks cool. Yeah, he throws like a lot of shots that you wouldn't see, like maybe I mentioned her earlier, Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade isn't going to throw lead left uppercuts. She isn't going to hook off of a jab. She's just throwing from here. Like her punches come from the same spot every time, here. And Francis is a little tighter. He's gonna jab. He's gonna throw an uppercut off of it from the lead hand. That's how he knocked out Overeem, turned him into a base frequency, called him a horse meat Pez dispenser, which is one of the best descriptions for that KO ever. Like, oh my god, unbelievable description. Horse meat Pez dispenser is amazing, and just terrifying guy. And another thing too is I think Stipe in their first fight exposed him for the holes in his striking, not just his wrestling. Everyone talks about how he just out-wrestled him. No, he was beating him up on the feet, too. He very nearly KO'd him a couple of times on the feet with big shots and had hurt him very well. Their faces didn't look like Stipe was winning the striking matchup, but that's because Stipe, he bruises like a banana. He's always been like that. But like Stipe exposed a lot of holes in his striking, and it's so weird to me because if you watch him fight, like, you know, Derek Lewis, which they didn't fight, they stared at each other. But then it was Blades and Jairzinho Rosenstruck after that.
And JDS and Kane as well.
Oh, did he fight those on the in-between?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. In all those fights, you didn't really see like a drastic turnaround in like in terms of his technical striking or his defensive wrestling. You didn't see him kind of like fill in the holes that he would need to deal with Stipe a second time. And then in that fight he just does, it is mind-blowing. You know, we always talk about the time he stuffed Stipe's takedown. Everyone's like reaction was like the same thing.
It was at this moment he knew he effed up.
Yeah, like you could hear. I always remember what Chael Sonnen said. And like, if Anderson Silva walks into a room, you can hear a mouse pee on cotton, and like a very, very down south expression from a guy who's from Oregon yeah, like. You could hear someone drop a pin needle or whatever in that room whenever that happened, because we all just went, oh no, like it was terrifying when that happened. And his boxing looked a lot better. He wasn't just swinging for the fences. He got caught, you know, but you know, because he if you watch the finishing sequence of that Stipe fight, which I have a hard time watching it because it's very brutal. Stipe catches him, and Francis kind of like, oh crap, and like backs up, and then throws the check left hook, and you know it's over. But against, I watched the Tyson Fury fight again for this to kind of, because I was like, what's he done recently? And in that fight, he's tightened up his boxing well. He still has that at the power that doesn't make sense. You know, like I think Bejeda's just the hardest hitter pound for pound ever, and I don't care what Joe Pfeiffer's mom says. Francis Ngannou is the hardest hitter ever. Like, you know, remember that part in Parks and Rec where it's like, sir, you need a permit for that, and he goes, Ron Swanson goes, I have it right here. It says I can do what I want. That's basically what Joe Pfeiffer did. Joe Pfeiffer was like, hey Dana, my mom wrote this letter. She wants you to read it. My son hits harder than Francis. Good enough for me, you know? I don't care what Joe Pfeiffer's mom says about his power. It's Francis Ngannou, the hardest hitter of all time. I watched Jackass 4, and the thing they let him cup test. I don't understand. I don't know if you've seen that clip. They told him, they're like, yeah, we're gonna get a UFC lightweight out here, and out walks Francis. And they have Danger Aaron in the cup going, that's like, that guy's not a lightweight. What are you guys doing? Like, and Steve-O's like has his phone and he's reading, like, you know, the whole thing. His punch hits harder than a Ford Escort. And Francis goes, hey, why are you telling him that now? like, it's so funny. And he holds back. And I think that is probably the second most painful thing they did in that skit. They had a woman throw a softball at like 90 miles an hour at it, and I went, no, I'd rather take Francis' punch than the softball that left a whelp like this big on his thigh when he flinched. But yeah, Francis is like, his boxing's gotten a lot better. I don't know how much wrestling training he's done since he's been boxing. That's like a fear I have, as I go, oh, he could just, you know, go back to what he did against Cyril Gahn, right? But you don't know. But my big thing on this whole tangent is He's really hard to tell what he's worked on because he seemingly doesn't make any improvements in between fights and then just randomly shows up like a brand new fighter. Like that's in MMA, his last two fights, that's exactly what it felt like.
I'd like to think Eric Nixick is a smart trainer.
Yeah.
I think
sure.
he's going to recognize that there is this hole in Renan Ferreira's game in terms of the grappling. And I do think we could, if it was me, I think we could see Francis Nurmagomedov turn up again. Because I think that's his easiest path to victory. In terms of Renan Ferreira, I'm going to go aggressive early.
You have to.
Because you've got those question marks about whether Francis still has the chin. 38 years old. He hasn't been in MMA for a long time. There could be a little bit of ring rust there. So I think from his perspective, he needs to go aggressive.
Do you know if Francis is confirmed 38 or if it's like one of those situations? No, like I'm being honest. Like I'm not making a joke. I don't know if you remember him, Kamal Shalarus. Remember him from WEC days?
The name rings a bell. So based off what I'm reading in front of me, Francis was born September the 5th, 1986. But I do know though that there was a big thing in football, soccer, where there were a lot of like Cameroonian, Nigerian players who were saying that they were 21, 22 years old when they were actually 5 or 6 years older than that. It's just the way that documentation is in sort of like African countries isn't as clear as it is in, say, the UK or the US.
Because from Kamal Shalarus, he was like 40-something in WEC when he was like, no, I'm like 30. And it was the weirdest thing. It's because he had an older brother who had passed away as a baby, and they kept his birth certificate. And it was a big process to go into town, which was like, I think he said was like a legitimate half-day travel to go into town and get a birth certificate because they didn't have a car. They legitimately were like riding an animal into town. And so when he was born, they just said, you know what? You're 10. Yeah, like, so I don't know if that's... I've heard situations happen like that in African countries as well, because I know Kamal Shalarus was in Iraq. I know, like, smaller countries where their bookkeeping isn't their top priority, like, you know, understandably so. I'm not trying to, you know, I hope no one takes this as offensive or anything like that, because I am genuinely curious, because I've known it's happened in other instances. I don't know if he's like that, because that's what I think happened with Yoel Romero. There is no way that dude is that old.
He's just a inhuman creature, though. Yoel Romero is just an animal of a man.
I love how you describe that like an inhuman creature. He was made in a lab. There's no way around it, I think. He had to have been made in like some kind of Cuban, like he has to be Captain Cuba. Like, you know, he's their Steve Rogers.
So here's one final question I do have, though, before we start wrapping things up. So let's say the main event happens. Renan Ferreira finishes Francis Ngannou. Is Don Davis, in those post-fight press conferences, crying into his suit? Or is he saying to the world, hey, your UFC champion, your heavyweight champion, was too scared to fight Ngannou. Mine went in there and beat the baddest man on the planet. Do you think he's more positive or negative in a Renan Ferreira victory?
He should be. I think, if I'm Don Davis, there is no way you lose here in my brain. As funny as it sounds, like him crying into his suit, you know, I think you have to have the mentality that there is no way you lose with whoever wins in the main event. Because if Francis wins, you go, this guy is the baddest man on the planet. John Jones legitimately would refuse to fight him. It's like, before Tom Aspinall, there was Francis Ngannou. You know, like, and this guy never lost his belt. If Renan Ferreira wins, you go, you kind of say what you say. I think you have to be ready to play both sides, because that's kind of it's the sad fact of a promoter. Is I feel like if I was promoting something like that, promoting fights or anything like that, I would have to have like planned speeches ready to go for each outcome. Like, okay, the blue corner one, I'll take this speech, and then red corner one here.
The Boris Johnson approach.
Exactly, but with this equally as awful haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be doing what Scala did after Seth Petrozelli beat Kimbo.
You can't do that. You can't be on the sideline. You can't do that, because Dana's gonna sit there somewhere and go, "That's effing illegal, you goof!" Like, you can't do that. If Renan Ferreira goes for a single leg early in the fight, then I know it's over. They definitely got to him in the back, Seth Petrozelli style. You should. I think admittingly though, I think this way. I think this is definitely a good fight to. I encourage purchasing this pay-per-view and supporting this card, because you want there to be competition between the two biggest names. I'll tell you this from a video game player. I'm a big-time gamer. From a gaming perspective, when Microsoft and Sony are going at it, and it's a pretty good fight, you get the best quality things. Xbox has been bad for so long that Sony has been resting on its laurels forever, and it's been kind of frustrating. You want, and if you don't believe me that the UFC is resting on its laurels, I implore you to watch any fight night this year, from top to bottom.
Does this make Nintendo rising?
Yeah, Nintendo's definitely rising, and that's not a nationality thing. That's just the sad fact of life. Nintendo, you could have been Brave FC. Just be lucky. You'll be lucky. I have a Switch in my room.
Good thing you mentioned some of these random fight nights that really drive you insane, because at this moment in time, Joe, you should be having one, which is online right now. Your recap of Brandon Royval versus Tetsuro Taira.
It's funny, as much as I make fun of them, I'm incredibly excited for that main event. I'm very intrigued.
That's one of the many things that we do have on INC Live, but also, if you want a little bit more of myself and Joe, we also have the Patreon page. So Joe, could you give us a little bit of a taster of some of the things that we have available for just £1 or $1 a month? You can get hours worth of content. You
get everything. You get, as you may know, the YouTube kinda doesn't like us right now. So if you want to see our content uncensored, uncut, don't take it that way. It's not like that. They're safe for work. We promise. My lawyers have to implore me to say they're safe for work. But all of our content uncensored, no trickery to get past the YouTube vetting system and copyright, all that noise, as well as stuff that we had to remove from YouTube altogether, and exclusive content. If you're a big book reader, Karl's been reading a book to try and get a book club going. I love movies. I love film. I'm a big film snob, and you can watch me pull my hair out trying to comprehend the insanity and stupidity that is Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. Or you can watch me just reflect and wax poetical praisings of the movie, and dare I say, MMA's Rocky Warrior, which is on the Patreon as well, plus all our retro reviews. And if you're a retro review fan and you see all these really cool cards that weren't voted for, they just kind of show up sometimes, and I do them, it's because they're Patreon requests, because as a bonus, you get all that stuff for signing up, but this is just a little icing on the cake, so to speak, the cherry on top, if you will. You can request any card as long as I can get my hands on it, and I will cover it for a retro review thing. We've done, Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. We've covered UFC 125 was one of my favorites. We've also done the greatest fight of all time between, as far as I'm concerned, Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar 1. And I went full Meltzer and broke my own scale. It's all downhill from here.
So Eric Bischoff's going to be ranting about you somewhere on the internet.
He has been, and I'm not gonna sit down and take it. I'm gonna have to. What was it? Who did Eric Bischoff have a match with in WCW?
Larry Zbyszko.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be Larry Zbyszko here. Give it.
So, as Joe touched on there, a truckload of content available on our Patreon page, and you do help us out big time by supporting us. So, Joe, we've managed to be talking here now for about 1 hour and 45 minutes, which, considering this was supposed to be like a small Brucey bonus preview, we've definitely outdone ourselves. But we do want to say a big thank you to the, 10 people who'll probably be watching this one. But we do genuinely believe, for the sake of mixed martial arts, it's a good thing to have competition. So we hope that you can support the PFL, hopefully buy their show. And myself and Joe, we will be back here next week, where we'll turn our attention back to the Octagon, UFC 308, and that eagerly anticipated match between Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway over in Abu Dhabi. My name's been Karl Bainbridge, this has been the INC, that's been Joe Neal. We hope to see you again soon. Bye bye for now.